What if I told you that it is your greatest strengths, not your weaknesses, that are sabotaging you the most in life? The things you're most naturally good at, not the things you're bad at, that are derailing you. Think about your strengths for a second. Do some reflection. What are your strengths? And I have a question. Who's done one of those strengths assessments online? Some sort of personality test, quiz, which Gilmore Girl character am I? Anything like that. Most people have. Maybe it was some fancy scientific version. Maybe it was like the Gilmore Girl type of quiz, or which Hogwarts house are you? I'm a Slytherin, by the way. You can decide what that means about me. Either way, these quizzes, test assessments are really good at giving us an intro to our strengths, our personality, the natural ways that which we move about the world. What they're not quite so known for is showing us what happens when our strengths get too loud, when we overuse our strengths. And I'm going to tell you a little more about what I mean by that, the problems that it causes and what we do about it, and specifically how it's impacting our education systems as well. And this is an observation I've made 100 of times before. I've studied behavioral psychology for years. I've administered thousands of these psychometric behavioral assessments. That's the fancy scientific version I was talking about. And I've coached and I've consulted with leaders based on those results, and I've seen a clear pattern as it relates to strengths. They're not like an on and off switch. Oh, there's the strength, and now it's gone, lights on, lights out. No, they're more like a volume knob. They turn up, and then they turn down. And I'm going to show you what that means with a few examples. You're going to see how this plays out when our strengths are serving us because they're dialed in right, and then when they're sabotaging us because they're turned up too loud. Like any volume knob on any device anywhere, if it's cranked up all the way, it overwhelms, it drowns out everything else and everyone else around, right? Let's look at some examples in education specifically. Think about the strength of a natural leader. Think about the teacher who, anytime there's an event or a project or initiative, she takes the lead. She's effective at gathering people around a common goal or purpose or mission. We love to follow this person. They're driven, they're effective, they're charismatic, and we're able to get a lot of things done in some really profound ways. But what happens when the leadership volume knob gets turned up too high? We've all seen this. The leader becomes the controller. So no longer are they effectively empowering people, they're actually disempowering people. They're micromanaging, they're overwhelming, and they're burning out the people that they were previously leading. Maybe they were delegating effectively before, but they start taking back the things they delegated because they have this mentality of, I just do it better myself. So good intentions, and when the strength was dialed in right, super effective. When it got cranked up too high, all of a sudden it's destructive, and it sabotages the people that they were trying to lead. And it's not just the big leadership, forward-facing people, it's the behind-the-scenes folks as well, the supportive strengths. Think about the nurturing parent. The mom who's at every single volleyball game, even shows up before practice is done to watch the last 10 minutes. The dad who gets home from school drop-off and sees that the lunch is still on the kitchen table. So he grabs it, turns back around, brings it up to the school so the kiddo can eat. These are nurturing parents. They're compassionate and loving and supportive. And these kids, they feel safe and protected. It's a wonderful, beautiful strength. But what happens when the nurturing strength is turned up too high? Well, the nurturer can become the enabler. We've all seen this one. The enabler rescues. The safety net is just way too close to the kid, and so now those children, they can't fail. They don't get to learn those valuable lessons from making mistakes and screwing up. So two very different types of strengths, and we see them dialed in, and they're serving their communities, their children, their students, and they're turned up too high, and they start to sabotage. The intentions are good, and we can see when they're good, and we can see when they begin to derail. Now, here's one that we really like to exalt in education. When we see this strength, we often like it so much that we miss when it gets turned up too high. The achiever. This is the straight-A student, driven, ambitious, applying to colleges early, extracurriculars galore, the president of a club or 5 clubs. And we love to watch these kids. We can't wait to see where they're going. We want to follow their journey and see what they can accomplish in their life. But we've also seen the heartbreaking dial cranked up too high on the achiever. What happens to the achiever? They become a self-critic. Nothing's ever good enough. They're such perfectionists that they begin to crumble under the weight of their own unrealistic expectations. I know we've seen this. Maybe this is you throughout your student career, throughout your work career. Maybe it's your kiddos right now. Again, all the time with all these examples, we see the dial when it's just right and it serves, and then we see it crank too high and it sabotages. Now, I'll tell you why I like this volume knob analogy so much. I'm a musician, and I led a band for a number of years. And I had this guitarist who would rotate through. And I promise you, I know for a fact his amp had a volume knob, but the dude had no idea where it was. He just cranked it to 11 one day and said, yeah, that'll do. That works. Drove me nuts in rehearsals. And you don't have to be a musician to know that nobody wants to go to a concert and hear a guitar amp blaring from the stage and nothing else. That's not good music. Good music has dynamics. You get to hear each instrument. Each instrument has an opportunity to shine. And so while the guy had talent, he had technical skill, he didn't have finesse. He didn't have dynamics. So that's what our strengths are like. We have to perfect the art of dynamics, of dialing it in just right. So how? What do we do with this information? I want to leave you with a 3-step framework that's pretty simple for how you can identify this in yourself and really perfect that art of dynamics so that your strengths shine through in the most effective ways that serve your communities. Step 1 is awareness. Simply awareness of your strengths. What are they? What did that online quiz tell you? You're a leader, you're a supporter, you're detail-oriented, you're a Rory or a Hufflepuff, whatever it might be. Do that work. Identify what your strengths are. But go deeper, right? Not just surface level. Figure out what's underneath this strength. What's the innate drive, motivation that's leading to this strength in yourself? Become aware of that. And once you're aware, step 2 is impact. This is recognizing the impact of when the strength is serving and when it is sabotaging. I have another question for y'all. Anybody in the audience that would consider themselves a people pleaser? Okay, quite a few. More than I expected. That's okay. There is a beautiful, wonderful strength beneath that. You are serving and supporting. You love for people to feel that sense of belonging and to feel like they are heard and seen. That's a wonderful strength. But you know, I'm kind of cat's out of the bag with the people pleaser comment. If you crank that up too high, now you lack boundaries. You have a hard time saying no. So that's a strength that you have. It's a powerful one to serve and love the people around you. But when you crank it up too high, if you're sabotaging yourself, you're not really able to serve the very people that you set out to love in the first place. So it's awareness, it's impact, recognizing when you're serving, when you're sabotaging, and then step 3 is choice. Anyone ever accidentally sat on the TV remote? Maybe the dog's paw just lands on the volume up button. Now the TV, it's all the way up, it's blaring, your ears are bleeding, you're frantically, where's the remote? Scrambling. Right? That's actually what our strengths are gonna do when they're left unchecked. Because unlike the obvious nature of a TV that's too loud, we don't tend to see when our strengths have cranked up too high. So choice, this third step, is simply you have the remote. You have your fingers on that volume knob, and you're dialing it again. You're experimenting a little bit. This one takes work, quite a bit. Going back to my musician days, it took a lot of practice and rehearsal and experimentation to know when do I roll the volume up and let the guitar solo shine through, and when do I back it away. Even how I sang, I had to exercise muscles to be able to project my voice when that was appropriate and when to back away and have that finesse and that dynamics and those more intimate moments with the audience. We have to do that work, and it's gonna take practice. You're gonna have to work those muscles to figure out how to perfect the right volume on your own strengths. Now, I want you to imagine your own life. You've been thinking about your strengths, hopefully, up to this point, and you're probably seeing when they crank up too high, whether the leader, the nurturer, the achiever, the supporter and server, how is that impacting you? Now imagine if you're able to perfect these dynamics. Imagine what your life and your impact would be on your community, your family, your students, your children, if you were able to perfect this. And then we get the opportunity, maybe even the responsibility, as we perfect this for ourselves, to teach it to our kids, to our students. And I think that the current generation that's being raised up right now, they have a heightened awareness of their strengths, to a fault sometimes. Because if they're like my guitarist and they have no idea where the volume knob is and they just crank it up to the max all the time, they're louder and they're faster and they're stronger, but they're not wiser. And that's not really what our society needs right now. It's not what our culture and our communities need. But imagine this whole generation raised up with not just a heightened awareness of their strengths, but really recognizing the impact and being motivated by that impact to perfect the dial, to make the choice of how their strengths show up when they are loud and present and when they back away so that they can let other strengths around them really shine. That's a whole generation that takes their strengths and turns them into superpowers. And these youngsters, man, they are so motivated, and I can't wait to see those superpowers help them become the heroes that our societies and our communities need. So my simple question for you is, what step will you take in your own life to begin perfecting the art of dynamics, dialing in the volume knob of your own strengths, perfecting it for yourself so you can teach others? What step will you take? Is it awareness? Is it impact? Or is it choice? Thank you.